Imagine being fired from the company you created. Imagine building a business from a small garage. Changing the world. Becoming a millionaire at 23. And then being kicked out of your own company at 30. Most people would never recover. But Steve Jobs did something extraordinary. He returned. And together with Apple, he created products that transformed how billions of people communicate, work, learn, and live. Today, Apple is one of the most valuable companies in history, worth more than many countries' entire economies. But this success wasn't built on luck. It was built on vision, obsession, failure, resilience, and the courage to think differently. This is the incredible story of Steve Jobs and Apple. A story that proves sometimes your greatest setback can become your greatest comeback. Steve Jobs' story began with an unexpected twist. He was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. Soon after birth, he was placed for adoption by his biological parents, who were not ready to raise a child. He was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a hard-working middle-class couple who gave him a loving home and endless encouragement. Steve's adoptive father, Paul, was a mechanic and craftsman who loved repairing cars and electronics. In the family garage, young Steve spent countless hours watching his father work. Paul taught him an important lesson that would stay with him for life. Great products are built with care and attention to detail, even the parts nobody sees. As Steve grew older, he became fascinated by how things worked. He enjoyed taking apart electronic devices and exploring new ideas. But traditional schooling was not always easy for him. He was intelligent, curious, and often bored in class. Teachers quickly realized that he learned faster than many of his classmates. Steve attended Homestead High School in Cupertino, California, right in the heart of what would later become Silicon Valley. There, his interest in technology grew even stronger. He attended electronics clubs, visited local technology companies, and listened to engineers discuss the future of computing. During his teenage years, he met someone who would change his life forever. His name was Steve Wozniak. Wozniak was an engineering genius who could design and build electronic devices with remarkable skill. Steve Jobs, on the other hand, had a unique talent for seeing possibilities that others missed. One could build the future. The other could convince the world to believe in it. After graduating from high school in 1972, Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Oregon. But college did not go as planned. The tuition was expensive, and he felt guilty about spending his parents' life savings on an education that did not inspire him. After only 6 months, he made a bold decision. He dropped out. To many people, it seemed like a mistake. But Steve continued attending classes that interested him, even though he was no longer an official student. One of those classes was calligraphy. There, he learned about beautiful lettering, typography, spacing, and design. At the time, it seemed completely unrelated to technology. Years later, however, those lessons inspired the elegant fonts and design that made Apple's computers stand out from every other machine. Steve Jobs was not following a traditional path. He wasn't focused on grades, diplomas, or doing what everyone else expected. Instead, he followed his curiosity. And that curiosity was about to change the world. In 1976, personal computers were not common. Computers were huge, expensive, and mainly used by businesses and universities. Most people believed ordinary families would never need one. Steve Jobs disagreed. At age 21, Jobs and Wozniak started Apple Computer from Jobs' parents' garage, with the dream of making computers small enough and simple enough for ordinary people to use. Their first product was the Apple I. They sold personal belongings to raise money. Jobs sold his Volkswagen van. Wozniak sold his calculator. Together they raised around $1,300. It wasn't much, but every giant company begins with a small step. The Apple I sold for $666.66. Around 200 units were produced. The real breakthrough came in 1977 with the Apple II. Unlike many competitors, it was user-friendly, colorful, and designed for ordinary people. The Apple II became one of the first mass-market personal computers. The Library of Congress notes that Apple II helped revolutionize the computer industry with the introduction of color graphics, and Apple's sales exploded from $7.8 million in 1978 to $117 million in 1980. By 1980, Apple went public. The company's IPO was one of the largest since Ford Motor Company. More than 300 employees became millionaires overnight. At just 25 years old, Steve Jobs was worth over $200 million. Most people would have celebrated. But Jobs was already thinking about the next revolution. In the early 1980s, IBM dominated the computer industry. Apple needed something revolutionary. Steve Jobs found inspiration at Xerox PARC. Researchers there had developed a graphical user interface and a computer mouse. Jobs immediately understood the potential. He believed computers should be simple enough for anyone to use. Not just engineers. Not just programmers. Everyone. In 1984, Apple introduced the Macintosh. The launch included one of the most famous advertisements in marketing history. A commercial inspired by George Orwell's novel, 1984. It aired during the Super Bowl, seen by about 43 million Americans, with a production cost of around $500,000 and instantly became legendary. The Macintosh introduced millions of people to graphical computing. Icons. Windows. Mouse navigation. Features we take for granted today. But despite its innovation, the Macintosh struggled commercially at first. Internal conflicts grew inside Apple. And Steve Jobs' demanding leadership style created tension. A major showdown was approaching. But Apple's early success concealed a growing internal war. Jobs had recruited John Sculley from Pepsi, hoping to pair visionary product ambition with corporate polish. Instead, the relationship deteriorated. By 1985, Apple's board sided with CEO John Sculley during a power struggle with Steve Jobs. The result shocked Silicon Valley. Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple. The company he helped create no longer wanted him. Imagine that moment. At age 30, Steve Jobs lost everything he had spent years building. Later he said, "I was out, and very publicly out." For months, he felt devastated, but something remarkable happened. He realized he still loved creating. He still loved building products. And failure had freed him to start again. This period teaches one of the greatest business lessons: success can make you comfortable. Failure can make you creative. Jobs didn't quit. He started over. After leaving Apple, Jobs founded Next in 1985. Next focused on advanced computers for education and business. Commercially, Next wasn't a huge success. But the technology was extraordinary. Years later, Next software would become the foundation of modern Apple operating systems. Around the same time, Jobs purchased a small animation company from George Lucas. The company was called Pixar. Many people thought it was a risky investment. Jobs invested millions of his own money. For years, Pixar struggled financially. Then everything changed. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the world's first fully computer-animated feature film, a massive success, earning $362 million worldwide, and Pixar's IPO was the largest of that year. Pixar would go on to create blockbuster hits including Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, and Up. Steve Jobs had become a major force in two industries, technology and entertainment. But an even bigger opportunity was coming. Apple needed him back. By the mid-1990s, Apple was in serious trouble. The company was losing money. Products were confusing. Innovation had slowed. And Microsoft's Windows ecosystem was crushing it in volume. Some analysts predicted bankruptcy. In 1997, Apple acquired Next for approximately $429 million. As part of the deal, Steve Jobs returned. Soon after, he became interim CEO. One of his first actions was brutal but necessary. He simplified Apple's product lineup. Dozens of products were eliminated. Jobs believed focus creates excellence. Instead of doing many things poorly, Apple would do a few things exceptionally well. This decision laid the foundation for one of the greatest corporate turnarounds ever seen. Then came a colorful computer called the iMac. Released in 1998. It became a huge success. Apple was back. But Jobs was only getting started. In 2001, Apple launched the iPod. At that time, carrying thousands of songs in your pocket seemed unbelievable. The iPod transformed the music industry. By 2007, Apple had sold more than 100 million iPods. Then came the biggest moment. January 9, 2007. Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco. He announced 3 products, a widescreen iPod, a revolutionary mobile phone, an internet communicator. Then he revealed they were all the same device. The iPhone. The audience erupted. The iPhone changed everything. It redefined communication, photography, navigation, entertainment, and business. The smartphone era had begun. Then Apple launched the App Store in 2008. Creating an entirely new digital economy. Today, millions of developers build businesses through Apple's ecosystem. In 2010, Apple introduced the iPad. Again, critics were skeptical. Again, consumers proved them wrong. Apple had mastered something rare, not giving customers what they asked for. Giving customers what they didn't yet know they needed. In 2004, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. Despite health challenges, he continued leading Apple. He unveiled product after product. In August 2011, Jobs stepped down as CEO. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at age 56. The world mourned. Tributes came from business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and ordinary people. But Jobs left behind more than products. He left a philosophy. A belief that technology and creativity together can change the world. Apple became the first company valued at $1 trillion in 2018. Apple's journey offers powerful lessons. Lesson 1, think different. Great opportunities often look strange at first. Lesson 2, simplicity wins. The best products are often the simplest. Lesson 3, failure isn't final. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple. Yet that setback prepared him for an even greater comeback. Lesson 4, focus creates excellence. Apple succeeded by saying no to thousands of distractions. Lesson 5, vision comes before results. Before the iPhone changed the world, it existed only in Steve Jobs' imagination. Apple's revenue grew from just $774 million in 1980 to over $416 billion in 2025, a more than 500-fold increase, showcasing one of the most remarkable growth stories in business history. And serves billions of users worldwide. From a garage startup in 1976, to one of the most influential companies in history. The story of Apple reminds us that extraordinary success begins with a simple idea: dare to think differently. If you enjoyed this business story, subscribe to BizStory English and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories behind the world's greatest companies and entrepreneurs. Thanks for watching.